Welcome back to XSOAR Engineer Training. This is part 19, Dynamic Sections. In this video, we'll create a pair of automation scripts that will be used to dynamically display data on incident layouts. And with that, let's get to it. Dynamic sections are automation scripts that are used to create dynamic sections to be displayed on incident layouts. For example, back in video number 5, we added a beautiful layout to our incident for our use case. And we added a tab to provide analyst tools, such as links to common tools they may use as part of investigation, as well as the response process they would need to follow for this particular incident. Reviewing our layout for that incident type within the XSOAR Layouts editor, we can see we have the Analyst Tools tab, and that both of these sections are essentially just Markdown. The first one displaying the list of tools in a nice Markdown table, allowing the analyst to click. Taking a look at the Analyst Review and Response Process section, again, this is just Markdown. However, both of these sections have one drawback. In order to update them, we need to update the layout. And if we want to use these tools across multiple layouts, that could mean a lot of work. So let's use a dynamic section to solve this problem. To start, in order to officially allow us to update the contents of our dynamic section, we'll store our Markdown in a handy XSOAR list. From the Settings, Advanced, and List menu, let's first create a list to hold our analyst tools. We'll call this Analyst Tools, or XET Analyst Tools. And we can even specify that this list is content type Markdown. We can paste in our Markdown table, which contains the links that we wish to display to our analysts. Next, we need to create our automation script. Much like previous videos, we can find dynamic sections by searching for tags and searching for dynamic section. Note that you can also create dynamic sections for indicators, but in this case, we'll be using the dynamic-section tag, which is specific for incidents. Feel free to reference the out-of-the-box dynamic sections, as they might be relevant for your use cases. In our script for our tools, we'll once again click New Automation, giving it a name, minding the title case, and hit Save. Once again, we'll remove the example script, and we'll tag this particular automation with the dynamic section. This ensures that we can use it as a dynamic section from our incident layouts. Once again, we've already pre-written our script, so let's paste it in and explain what it's doing. In this case, our script does not require any arguments or outputs, as it's simply designed to display the Markdown from our XSOAR list within the dynamic section. We start by specifying the list name, which is the XET Analyst Tools list that we created, and then we use our execute command and our familiar get list function. If you're not familiar with this can be referenced from within the script helper and is used to return the contents of an XSOAR list. As with previous videos, we retrieve the exact contents of the list from item 0 and the contents key. Next, we continue to step up our game with a little bit of error handling. If a list does not exist when executed from the getList function, it will return item not found. In this case, we have an if statement that if the item or the list is not found, we'll return a really nice message in the dynamic section. If not, we'll use the command results function, again available from our script helper. Command results will rebuild the result to be returned and displayed. In this case, all we're interested in is displaying the readable output, which is already marked down from our list. In addition, we're going to disable auto extract to make sure we don't extract any indicators from this contents. Lastly, we'll use return results to return that result and display the markdown on our incident section. We can save our script, and we can actually test this from within our XSOAR playground. Close out of here and navigate over to our playground. We can execute our automation from the XSOAR command line interface. If we've done our job correctly, the list will be displayed with the links available to be clicked. This looks pretty good, so let's add it into our incident layout. Back in the layout editor, we're going to remove the analyst tools section. In its place, from the available sections on the left-hand side, we're going to select General Purpose Dynamic section. This is what's used to run our script and display its data. We can edit the section details. We'll call this Analyst Tools. And you can see that we have available the automation scripts that are tagged with Dynamic section. In this case, we can select our XCT Analyst Tools script and hit OK. Saving our layout, we can pivot back to an incident and see how this looks. From our incident, we can pivot back to the Analyst Tools tab and see that our Dynamic section displays our markdown with our links, allowing our analysts to pivot out and continue their investigation. Use of the Dynamic section offers us much greater flexibility. For example, to add a link, we can simply pivot back to our list, Settings, Advanced, and Lists. We can edit our XCT Tools list. In this case, we can add one more link to the bottom and hit Save. And if we pivot back to our incident and reload the Analyst Tools tab, you can see that our new link has been added. Next, let's step our game up and modify the response process section, allowing for increased flexibility when using this. To start, we're going to create a pair of XSOAR lists once again. The first one, we'll call this default response process. In this case, we'll add some markdown with the default response process should one not exist. Next, we'll create a list that will contain the response process for our specific incident type. In this case, our XSOAR engineer URL alerts type that we've been building throughout this series. We can add the markdown that was previously contained within the layout of that particular incident type. Changing our type to markdown, and we can hit save. We can add our new automation to utilize these two lists. And clicking new automation, we'll call this one XCT response process and hit save. Removing our example code, we'll add the tag for dynamic section, indicating that this is indeed a dynamic section. Once again, we've already pre-built our script, so we'll paste it in and walk through what it's doing. To start, we're giving a variable that defines the default response process. We'll use this should a response process not exist for our specific incident type. Next, we're using our familiar demisto.incident method and getting the type from the incident where this automation script is being executed from. Next, we'll use our getList command and return back the list for the incident type response process. So we created one for the XSOAR engineer URL alerts and added response process. After that, a little bit more error checking. In the event the list does not exist, it will return item not found. In this case, we'll have our script execute another command, getting the list for the default response process, which we've defined up here. In this way, if we don't have a response process list for a specific incident type, it will fall back to the default. We'll use our command results to return the readable output. In this case, the list is already marked down, and return that as the result for our dynamic section. Now, in the event the list does exist, we'll do the same, grabbing that list, returning the readable output, which is marked down, and the result for our dynamic section. So let's see how this functions by testing it with a couple incidents. To start, we'll execute our automation from an incident where the incident type is the XSOAR engineer URL alerts. From the command line interface, we'll type in XCT response process, and if we've done our job correctly, we should display the response process from the list that contains that information, which looks pretty good. Next, we can try it from an incident where we don't have a list that contains that response process. In this case, we randomly picked one which has a different incident type than the last one. If we execute our automation from the CLI, we can see that we get the default response process from our default response process list. This looks great, so let's add it into our incident layout. In the Layouts editor, we can remove the response process section and once again replace it with a general purpose dynamic section. We can edit this section, changing its name, call this response process, and once again pick our XET response process script that we just built. If we hit OK and save our layout, we can go see how this looks on an actual incident. Pivoting back, we can review our Analyst Tools tab and see that we do indeed get the response process from our list. Another example, how we can use a dynamic section to make our layouts extremely flexible. In this case, if we want to change the response process, we simply need to edit the list now. Or if we want to add a response process for another incident type, we simply need to add a list that's appropriately named so that our automation will pick it up. And with that, let's review what we did in this video. Dynamic sections can be used to display data from incidents, the context, or even XSOAR list on incident layouts. In this case, the scripts in this video make updating our layouts a breeze. You can also use dynamic sections to display graphical charts, much like XSOAR widgets. Take a look at the XSOAR admin guide for more information. And with that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.